Yeah. I guess we were both done with it. It's like I'm actually beginning to realize I'm more. Yeah, now, yeah, it's that's what you should have. It's to see that. Yeah. The Waco MPO Policy Board of April 20th, 2023 to order at 2:01. Staff, is this meeting open? Yes. Yes, it has. Are the councils to be called into session? I don't think so, right, Councilman?
No, it's just the two.
Just the two. Before we open, I'll run through a roll call. Councilmember Bearfield is here. Jacob Bell is here. Deputy City Manager Emerson. See city people with that. Judge Felton. Holmes here. City Manager Calvin Hodges here. Mayor Jessica. Yes. Is he here? Commissioner Jones. Oh, he's stuck in the other one too. City Manager Lemon, right here. Mayor Mead, it's not here. City Manager Oubre. TxDOT District Engineer Stan Spytek is here. City Manager Zachary is here. Councilmember Borderoot is not here. City Manager Evans right there. Plan Commissioner Ross Harris is right there. Councilmember Rodriguez is not here, and City Manager Thomas is right there. All right, thank you so much. We will now conduct a public hearing. The public to speak on any discussion or action item on the agenda at this time and provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO Policy Board on any agenda item. Please complete the speaker's registration card with MPO staff. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note that each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time. You will only be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. For items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. So staff, do we have any registered speakers? No. We're dismissing. No, we don't have. There are no registered speakers. So we will move to agenda item number 3 and consider approval of the minutes of March 16, 2023 MPO Policy Board meeting. Copy of the minutes was provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes that were submitted? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Now I notice that Josh, Council Mayor Pro Tem, Borderoot is here, and so we will call on the City Waco Council into session.
Extra 1 recess. We want to fix the presentation slide.
We will. Josh, since you're here, we have a 1 minute. 1 minute break. Can you entertain us?
Okay.
We're good. Yeah. We're good. Okay, we've got 2 action items today.
Do you call?
Yes. I didn't say the time at 2:04. 2 action items today. One of them is another target action, and the second one is talking about the SS4A grant. And Dr. Kumar will be telling us about those. Item number 4 on the agenda is consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-7. The Waco MPO Policy Board's report of a 2-year and 4-year pavement and bridge condition performance targets for national highway system facilities within the Waco metropolitan area established by TxDOT in accordance with requirements from the Fixing America's Surface Transportation. Dr. Gilmore.
One more second. Thank you. So pavement and bridge maintenance, pavement and bridge condition, it's one of the 4 performance targets that we adopt at Waco MPO each year. Typically, if TMAs adopt 2 more related to air quality and congestion management, we do 4 of them. This is the last one for the year, and this one typically runs for 4-year target, which is revision for every 2 years. The purpose behind the pavement and bridge maintenance, and some of it is a repeat from the last meeting, so I'm going to keep it a little shorter than the last time. The idea is to ensure both safety, preservation, maintenance, and also long-term operations. This is part of the transportation asset management process that Federal Highway Administration implemented with its FAST Act. The asset management, it allows us to use data and performance-based decision-making, and also implementation of appropriate and cost-effective improvement based on life cycle cost, as well as current condition and what is defined as the state of good repair. Next slide. So for us, when we talk about pavement and bridges, the area that we are looking at, the pavement that is on system is the Interstate Highway 35, and all the non-interstate are listed here: 77, 84, 631, Loop 340, and 484. So this is McLennan County, which is same as our planning area, and the non-interstate on-system roads are listed in, are presented in red, and the Highway I-35 is in blue. Next slide, please. So the way we track pavements in Texas is that we typically look at the rut occurrence, surface deterioration, and also the International Roughness Index. And these tell us the right quality of it. We combine these measures into determining whether a particular road segment is in good condition or fair condition or poor condition. And we typically do this with the manual collection of data for every half-mile segments. And once we combine them, it's a composite score that we come up with. And the poor is typically defined whenever our composite score is less than 50, fair is 50 to 69, and the good is considered at 70. Next slide. This is the one, yes. So for bridges, one more. Yes. So for bridges, we typically look at the 3 different components of a bridge: the deck, the superstructure, and the substructure or culvert, whatever is underneath. And in the case of bridges, it goes from 0 to 9, 9 being in the best condition. Poor is less than 4, fair is 5 to 6. And good essentially means that there is little to no sign of deterioration for the bridge. Fair means that it is going to start showing some signs, and so we need to be starting paying attention to it. And poor basically means that we need to prioritize fixing it, but how to do it, what to do about it. So in this particular case, the targets that the TxDOT has presented, and I should clarify this a little bit, that when TxDOT presents these, sends these targets to the MPO, MPO has 2 options. MPO can take the targets, adopt them as they are for the planning area, or it can revise the target. In our case, when we looked at the TxDOT performance suggested targets that are here in this table, we realized that these numbers are in fact identical to what we had come up with. And so we are adopting the same target as TxDOT had presented for the MPO. And so looking at these numbers, you can see the current target, current data are 60.9% of the of the highway, that's I-35. And the 4-year target is for good 63.6. Similarly, for the poor portion, from 4.5 that is current to 0.2%, and non-interstate highway, so non-I-35, from 38.5% good, we expect it to be 45.5, and for poor condition, we expect it to be between 0 about 1.5%. For bridges, we expect it to be 48.5%, and for poor, we expect it to decline to 1.5%. The most important point there is that with the expectation of I-35C project underway, we expect we expect to meet our 4-year target, and it will be an improvement over current condition.
Can I ask a question of Amy Berlarley Island, way on the other side of the river? Like, we talk about pavement condition in the city. Does this track those same kind of guidelines for how to assess pavement quality, or is this a different whole set of standards?
This is different.
Okay, this is a statewide standard, and it's not the one.
Yeah, the cities is we have to have a truck run over every foot, 640 miles of streets.
Yeah, so these targets are fairly standard for the on-system roads, and again, expectations are different because parameters for city streets often they serve the neighborhoods, and so the vehicular weight limits and such are fundamentally different for city street versus the on-system roadway network. So they don't track identically at all.
So these are two different sets of standards.
Yeah, but to Mayor Pro Tem's observation, it would be interesting if is there ever an overlap where we're measuring the same street as we are in MPO? Yeah, that's kind of what you're saying, though, right?
I'm just interested if it's similar.
Yeah. I'd be curious. We don't need to do this meeting. I'd be curious.
Right.
They said it was good and he said it was terrible.
Included TxDOT roads in our.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think. Okay.
So the takeaways for the Waco area pavements, the summary of it is that the proposed 4-year target will increase I-35 in good condition portion to be 63.6% poor, decrease to 0.2%. And for non-national highway system, we expect it to be 46% good and 1.5% to be poor. For bridge condition, about 50% of the bridges in Waco area are in good condition, 3% are in poor condition. None of the bridge is considered poor at this point in time on the I-35, and we expect to meet the target in the current performance period.
Is there a word or a term for the 47%? What is fair or will not break?
Fair. Well,
Fair.
yes.
No guarantees.
Okay.
Fair effectively puts it on our radar that we need to be paying close attention to and start thinking about a time frame within which we need to address before it start turning forward. So at the last meeting, you had directed us to conduct the public engagement, and the public comment period was between March 20 and March 29. And the comments were accepted in every language, and we also posted on our social media. Public meeting was on March 20th at 12 noon, and we presented, recorded, and put it on MPO website. And no formal comments were received in the process. So the technical advisory committee considered. At the last technical advisory committee, we did not have a quorum, so we could not formally vote, but of the members present, they felt we could support this. And so they were supportive of 2-year and 4-year pavement and bridge condition performance targets as presented. So for today, today's action item is the public hearing followed by discussion and the options for you to consider, in which you can either adopt the target or modify it.
Are there any questions of Dr. Kuhn on this? Josh had a couple of good observations. I'm encouraged that we kind of came up with our own targets, and then TxDOT had its targets and triangulated to basically the same numbers. So that sounds right. And also our assessment was taking into consideration the completion of certain highway segments that we think will raise that number. So I'm supportive of this. Any other questions? We will now open a public hearing at 2:14. Do we have any registered speakers for this, Ned? We do not. We will close the public hearing at 2:14. And I will ask for a motion. Move for approval. Should we? Council, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bearfield, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Borderud. Is there any discussion? No discussion on the item. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. That motion passes. We move on to item number 5, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-8, Waco MPO Policy Board acceptance of the SS4A grant and authorization of MPO director to execute all related grant agreements. Dr. Kumar.
So we have been talking about safety and SS4A for almost 6 months now. And so we have the grant, and today we are asking for you to direct us to take the next steps. That's essentially what it is. We were awarded this SS4A funding to develop a comprehensive safety action plan, which supports Vision Zero, not only nationally, but also TxDOT had its own Vision Zero Safe Street for Texas SS4T program. And in fact, today we just had a workshop, all-day workshop that we concluded at 1:45, 15 minutes prior to this meeting, in which several members of the city government and municipal staff and some consulting firms as well. We had a discussion on how to think about it, how to go about it, what are some of the considerations that we could be taking. So in many ways, we have started doing the work already. And so workshop was in some ways a kickoff of this discussion. And so in terms of where we are with the comprehensive safety action plan, you notice that on the blue line in the center of the slide, we have started the development of comprehensive safety action plan. We want to do it at the earliest possible date so that cities could start applying for implementation projects from this. And that's the green portion of it. And at the MPO, we would like to help as much as we possibly can, because this is one of those programs which comes once in a, I don't think last time there was any, we talk about funding most of the times, but we talk about them as part of our overall cost allocation, but we never talk about safety as a standalone performance that we want to achieve, and this is the first time we're seeing it. So we're really excited about moving forward with this. So the desired outcomes for this, next slide, please. From this action plan, what we expect is to, safety is not something that happens because one day we wake up and decide to become safe. Safety is often a function of what we have decided over the last 20 years. And whatever we decide today, it may not result in very short term, tomorrow effect, but it will have it will fundamentally change how we experience our mobility. And so accounting for equity and human scale in the planning decisions for public spaces is how we would like to put it. And that way we are not thinking about safety only in terms of the joke we like to make is the Michelin Man is a perfect example of being very safe, but that's not how most of us would actually like to live our lives. And so we actually want to experience safety in our day-to-day life the way we are used to living. And so in order to do that, one of the things we have listed, all the programs that are listed here, from traffic safety to public health, schools, bike walk, community neighborhood association. These are all the different entities that we would like represented on a safety action task force. That way we can think about safety not only in terms of drivers' behavior, but more in terms of how we can do physical interventions, as well as set targets about the quality of public spaces we have so that we can experience them as meaningful terms. So the next steps related to the award is that we would like, we are requesting the policy board to formally accept the award today as part of the resolution. And we are also asking for your authorization for me to execute the grant agreement. We are in touch with our federal highway representative who will be executing the grant. And we have started producing the draft grant agreement document. We do not have a kickoff date settled yet with the Federal High Administration. The day we have kickoff date and we sign the contract, that's when we can formally start working. So what we would like to do is that the moment we execute the grant, we would like to seek a consultant as soon as possible. So we would, it's a fairly aggressive timeline on this that we are working on. We really want to be very aggressive about it. And so by April or May, that's what we are hoping, that we can come out with the RFQ. And the board member, Jacob Bell, has offered to help us write the portion of it. And so we'll be reaching out to you very soon so that we have the draft ready. Only reason why we're waiting a little bit is we want to sign the agreement before we actually approach and get you all to volunteer your time. And so just a little bit of refresher, we have a budget of $700,000, of which $560,000 is the federal share, $140,000 is the local match. Of that $140,000, we are expecting somewhere about 40 to 70,000 to be the in-kind match and 70 to 100,000 to be the local cash match. The local match is financed through the local fund contribution that you all are making. Based on this, we presented technical advisory committee has again, this was not a formal vote, but they were supportive of accepting the SS4 grant and authorizing the MPO to execute all related agreements.
Any questions of Dr. Kumar? This one to me is like we're going to get this 800,000 for the CSAP development, the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. That kind of unlocks this 5 to 6 billion grants over the next 5 years. It can go not just to Waco, but every community in the MPO, which I encourage and I hope everybody engages on this across the county. For these are some serious sized federal grants that we can line up for across the county. I'm excited about what we can do with this funding source. And I also want to thank Jacob Bell for jumping on the grenade here, helping us out on the CSAP.
It wasn't phrased to me that way.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, we will now open a public hearing at 2:21. Are there any registered speakers? There are not. We'll close the public hearing at 2:21, and I will entertain a motion to approve. I entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Warder. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Keith Evans there. Any discussion? Will I put it to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. We will now move to item number 6, review and discussion regarding a charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program notice of funding opportunity.
Thank you. So this information is partly for information purposes, but it is also part of some of the work that at the NPO we will be doing for rest of the year. And so part of the federal government, I'm sure we're all aware that federal government has been emphasizing electrification of our transportation mobility system as much as possible. And so the most important component of it is simply having the charging facility. So until now, we have been talking about the NEVI planning process, and the TxDOT had a NEVI plan that is being implemented as we speak. But the early part of that NEVI plan was to cover the alternative fuel corridors, which largely meant I-35 or these larger national highway system. The second portion of that NEVI plan, which was going out onto the on-system roads, is going to get implemented once alternative fuel corridors are completed. And we are expecting the timeline on that is roughly about November of this year, after which we'll come back again and have more discussion related to the NEVI program. But meanwhile, the charging and fueling infrastructure program is supposed to cover the portions that it is more of a complement to the NEVI plan rather than an alternative. So in this particular case, the expectation is that for a lot of private businesses and different community facilities or municipalities themselves can apply for this competitive funding and be able to install more charging stations wherever they're needed. And so this is a lot more locally driven as we speak than the NEVI plan has been so far. NEVI plan will also be locally driven, but that will still be, most of that funding is going to be largely dedicated to highways. But this program is more for the city streets and city businesses and so on. So what it is, the electrical vehicle charging station, one of the nice things is that it in fact covers not only the charging station, but also hydrogen refueling, propane, natural gas, and also wants proposals to integrate the charging infrastructure with the smart technology. Next slide, please. So the goal is to promote adoption of clean transportation technology, transport-related emission. We are expecting to decrease that, and we also want to serve. This is one of the concerns with the NEVI planning quite a bit. There are serious equity concern whether it's a chicken and egg problem, that should we wait until people have electric cars, or should we put charging stations before people have actually bought electric cars? And so that is a major concern. CFI is supposed to fill that gap as much as possible, and also in the process, hopefully build resilient infrastructure. It is a competitive program, meaning that one has to complete an application. It is not a formula grant the way NEVI plan is. So there is $700 million available in the first round as we speak, and for which the closing date is May 30th. Portions of this still needs to be near or close enough to alternative fuel corridor, which in our case right now is I-35. And half of that money, $350 million, is allocated to that. And the remaining $350 million are publicly accessible locations along roads, any roads throughout the city is what is available. Individual awards can be $500,000 to $10 million, and all cities are eligible to apply. And again, we are more than happy to help in any way we can. We have been completing several federal programs and such, so we're here to help. In terms of difference between that, so as I mentioned, CFI is a competitive fund, NEVI is going to be formula fund. In the CFI, we're expecting $2.5 billion over 5 years directly to cities, counties, local governments, and tribes. For the NEVI program, it's going to be $5 billion over 5 years, and that's going to go through the state DOT. CFI is for filling gaps in national network, whereas NEVI plan is for creating an interconnected network throughout the country. And so this CFI program is really supposed to help us with the downtowns and the neighborhoods. For us, the corridor ready designated AFC, you can see that the green line, those are the ones, and the dotted lines are the ones which are where a lot of they're pending charging stations. They're not complete yet, but we're expected to TxDOT expects to complete them by November of this year. Next slide. This is for us, as I've been mentioning, that I-35 is really the only one that is on our list. Next slide. And for all the other types of fuel, these are the examples of EV charging station in the center. You can see that's I-35. Compressed natural gas, most of it is one close to Highway 6, the other next to I-35. For LNG, we only have one location close to Beverly Hills, close to I-35. And for propane, we have 2 locations. So we are relatively short even on these other alternative fuels as well. So this CFI program allows us to offer investment in those categories as well. Eligible entities are states, local governments, MPO, transit agencies, and tribes. And it is. Let me just explain this a little bit better, how some of the cities have started thinking about what to do about this and how to implement it. So the moment this NOFO came along, there were several developers who had reached out to different cities here and asked that I hear that there is an incentive program by the federal government. Do you know anything about it? And most cities, they can't be prepared for it immediately because typically it requires some level of contractual agreement with the developers. So for instance, if City X were to apply for this competitive grant, what they also need is to have a certain number of developers who are willing to put charging network in there and be able to cover the 20% local match as part of their investment into the charging station. And so it does require a certain amount of thinking or upfront work before we can actually apply for this. So in the first round, one of the suggestions I have made to all the cities so far, I want you to be aware of, is that considering a project for your fleet vehicle is probably the easiest project to come up with, which does not require that much preparation work. And to an extent, there are some cities that have started working on that. So I am hoping that we will have at least 1 or 2 applications in this round. But as we move forward with the CFI, there is a lot more collaboration that is expected as part of this application process. And again, we are more than happy to facilitate them any way we can. Next slide. Selection criteria are project readiness, impact, cost effectiveness, innovation, and equity. And as I mentioned, project readiness is where things it requires some prep work, and fleet vehicles are probably the easiest one for which most cities probably are project ready and they can apply for it. So takeaways are that, a near-term options and RFP process that you could do for developers or anyone else or businesses. So it does not even have to be developers. It's fresh in my mind because I've interacted with them quite a bit related to this. But this could be any business, for instance. This could be the parking lot of a strip mall, and all the businesses can decide to put charging stations, and the cities can get into contract and apply for the funding on their behalf, in which they can cover the 20% local match, and the city can facilitate the process. One of the important things that I want to mention is that part of this grant includes operations and maintenance of the charging stations for 5 years. And so in terms of financing, it's a really good program for us to apply to. We will, by December of this year, we would have convened a very brief, we don't want that to be a major planning document, and we just want a guideline for most cities. So we have started working on it briefly. Connected and automated vehicle work group is going to help us track that plan so that we have a Navy CFI broad guideline type of action item. But meanwhile, instead of waiting for that, if there is anybody in your respective city who wants to put a grant together, please let us know so that we can help them. That's all I have.
Any questions of Dr. Kumar on the CFI? Now,
I mean, I know how where we are in Waco with this, how we deepen the infrastructure of charging stations and whatnot. What is the temperature of the other communities, of our other communities?
So fleet is really what for this round it would be pretty useful. And because most cities typically do have their fleet locations, especially at night, at single locations, so they don't even have to be, and those are publicly owned. So the criteria is that these charging stations still need to be publicly accessible. And there are private vendors who are ready to move in. And so on your green signal, they can actually install the charging station fairly quickly, and they're well prepared. And so far, nobody has committed to applying for this grant yet, but it is being considered in at least 3 communities.
great. And the funding mechanism again, is it require any matching? Is it?
There is a 20% match,
20?
and the expectation is that the private entity that will own, operate it for at least 5 years, they will come up with a 20%.
Okay, so it's not necessarily municipal, but it's a private.
Yes.
Okay.
But for fleet type of system, I would think that depending on how city wants to structure it. So for instance, it's very much possible that the city can contract with one of the charging station providers and have a contract, and the charging station provider then can come up with a 20% match, but they operate it as a business.
Yeah, but I guess you park your fleet at a different
Yes.
location. Seemed like it would work. Anyway, all right. Yes, it seems like the whole NEVI and CFI is coming around pretty quickly. Electric vehicle charging station. I was doing some work out in California last week in Chicago. I was all country last weekend, but there's a lot of electric vehicles on the road. Just they're all over the place. Now, I didn't look for the charging. I never said that.
Because they only have to what, 2030?
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
California?
California's under kind of somewhere out there. But I was driving a fossil fuel car. I didn't want to get hung out. Okay, any other questions? I'm sorry. Any other questions here on this? Thanks, Dr. Kumar. We'll go to the next item, number 7, update and discussion regarding carbon reduction program. Call for proposals.
We wanted to give you an update on where we stand today. So the deadline for carbon reduction program is May 1. So we have about 10 days left. So far, we have 3 proposals that we have received. And there are 6 others who have started. And so we are expecting that we have reminded them to complete the proposal. If we do not get sufficient amount of proposals, then our fallback is that we will look into the alternative transportation plan and the current MTP and then pull out the project that we can allocate funding to, because in this first round, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, about 2.5 million for this year. And then over the next 5 years, it's close to 7.5 million combined. Portions of the carbon reduction program is the direct allocation from federal higher administration, which for this year is about $550,000. And the remaining 1.7 million or so is the state's allocation in the CRP program. And so we have almost $2.2 million to allocate for this year, but we have about $7.5 million to allocate for the next 5 years. And so if you still have some proposals that have not been submitted, please encourage them to submit. We intentionally kept the call for proposal process as simple as possible, so it will not take them a lot of time to propose the proposal. There are 7 questions that they need to answer, one of which is simply the location of the project, and rest of them require them a bit of thinking. If you have any of the transportation alternative projects, for instance, those are really important that we discuss them. In this case, level of reduction in transportation emission, equity, future generation, connection to land use consideration, local match. Those are the 5 items they respond to. And these are all example projects. Everything that has to do with bike pedestrian facility, tree planting to transit related documents, electrified truck parking, desired path, ride sharing program, even street lights, leasing of alternative fuel vehicles. It's a very long list of projects. And so we expect to see as many applications as possible so that we can allocate almost the entire $7.5 million sooner the better. So just to remind you of the process, on May 4th through May 9th is the evaluation period. At the next TAC meeting, we will have presentation from all the project sponsors, and they will present their projects for 3 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of question and answer. Then evaluation team will evaluate, present it to the TAC meeting at the June 1 meeting, and the selected projects that will be brought to the policy board. And then at that time, we'll ask the policy board to authorize us to conduct a public hearing on the projects that are submitted with a formal announcement after the public hearing.
Any questions on the carbon reduction program? Call for proposals. So we've got 3 in the can and there's 6 being worked on, I guess. Are those active 6 or are they abandoned? Or?
They're active.
Good. So we'll have 9 by the end of, which is the end of next week, basically. Yes. Well, any other questions on that? There being none, we'll move on to item number 8, update discussion from the Technical Advisory Committee. Zane done here today?
No, he's out of.
Yes. So no other report. Anybody else? Amy?
I missed the last meeting because it was the budget.
Yes. We will move on to item 9, discussion updates from Texas Department of Transportation regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan areas. The Clayton Zonka show. Yeah. Get ready to go eat your popcorn.
Yeah.
Presentation.
So starting with Waco Drive, this is a job that should see quite a bit of movement starting next week. We have over half of the services in place now for our electrical cutovers. I'm actually planning to start at Center Point on Monday, cutting over there, working our way from west to east. We're looking at roughly 2 months or so of work to get those intersections cut over, demoed, and then get the corner pieces kind of tied in there. So approximately 2 months left there. State Highway 31 overpasses, again, still on track for completion of fall of this year. Continuing the rapid work on the mainline bridges, look to actually switch traffic end of this month, early part of May, to finish up some of the intersection work, and then continuing the widening on 939 back to the south. And here's just an overhead shot of that project. 939 is actually on the top of the page, so that's running south. You can see the newly constructed bridges there, and again, should see traffic on those beginning of May. A Spring Valley widening again between Sun Valley and Hewitt Drive, still on track for the 2024 completion. The big focus continues to be on the east half of the roadway through the project limits, getting ready to start paving from Old Temple to Sun Valley in the next few weeks, and then continuing drainage work from there back to the south. wall to wall. So a project that's seen a lot of movement over the last few weeks and has quite a bit more coming over the next several weeks. It'd be easier to talk through the pictures. Slides. So starting at the Bagby intersection, one thing to note, Weber will have a barrier crew in the first part of May. One of the places they will be hitting is that U-turn there in front of the Central Texas Marketplace. So you'll see barrier there. Hopefully get that open to traffic this summer. Here is where we made our recent traffic switch for the westbound main lane. This is the Beverly exit you see at the bottom of the page. Traffic has been taken off the main lanes to the newly constructed frontage road. And Weber had started to demo that old pavement to reconstruct the main lanes there. Here's just a shot at the new Beverly bridges over the railroad tracks. Again, the bottom of the page is the westbound where we've made our switch already. The eastbound bridge should be open to traffic by the beginning of June. So just a mirror image of what we just did. Westbound main lanes will be taken off the old pavement, put on the new frontage road bridges. What that'll let us do is continue the demo of both directions of the main lanes over the railroad and get the new bridges built there. Moving towards industrial, here is where our detour takes traffic from new pavement back to old if you're headed west. These are the bridges close up to 84. We actually plan to pour one next week. The other direction we pour the following week. The westbound bridge will be open to main lane traffic. Looks like probably late June, something like that. The other direction will be open to frontage road traffic. That'll be, yes, correct me if I'm wrong here, but end of May, early June, have frontage road traffic on yet. One thing I did fail to mention, go back one slide, please. So the Imperial exit here at the top of the screen, there will be a 2-week closure of that intersection coming up at the beginning of May. That'll allow for full width reconstruction of the intersection. We've got some distance incentives set up in our contract to try to expedite that work, but again, from May 8th, approximately 2 weeks there to close that intersection.
And everybody who's affected by that is well aware.
So our public information team is up and down Imperial right now.
Okay.
They've had contact made previously and knew this was coming. Now we're coming back with this process.
Where do you reroute? How do you reroute? I guess we'll go back
So we're gonna,
or through Jewel. I mean,
so our detour will be through Hewitt Drive and 84. People
Okay.
come on state facilities, which there's other ways around over there, but traffic will be set up if somebody does make it down to Imperial, they'll have the ability to U-turn and get back around there. We're not just gonna stick barricades there and dead end. The next one. The interstate. So what are the pictures? Again, kind of in the wrap-up statements here to the south end of the job. Main things going on here, getting final grading in place, putting sod and seed down to get vegetation established. 11th and 12th Street, one thing to note here, we do have the pedestrian signals up and active as of today. Our technicians have been on site this week getting all of that programmed. So signals are fully operational, a little bit of cleanup and landscape work to do in the intersection traffic. Same intersection, just looking at the west tie-in. 4th and 5th Street, east side, bulk of this work is done minus some cleanup. Again, this is one of the locations our technicians are getting pedestrian signals programmed this week. On the west side, there by the CVS, all of that sidewalk has been completed since this photo was taken. There's some backfilling of the curb, getting some sod and seed down. And this intersection is done too. University Park. The bulk of the work right now is from the 2nd Street area to the ER clinic. We've got half that driveway forward. That work will be wrapped up at the beginning of next week. I'm getting final grading there, and this area will be cleaned up. Brazos River, the south bank is in its cleanup stages now. Looks to have that pedestrian path kind of reopen hopefully early next week. North bank will lag a little bit behind that later in the week, possibly to the week following, depending on what the weather does.
South is downtown Baylor side, north is East Waco.
Right.
Okay.
In between the stadium.
Making sure, we always.
Right.
North is
Yeah.
east and
Here's just another shot looking back to the south of the Brazos River. MLK, the bulk of this work is getting the landscape pavers and color textured concrete wrapped up. And again, that's on schedule to be done next week. Business 77, there's a little bit of punch list work to do with some curb and flat work. But this is another location that either tomorrow or early part of next week, those signals will be fully operational with the PED buttons as well. And then just the west side of the same intersection. 84, this one minus the pedestrian buttons, which again is ongoing. It's just got some cleanup work. The same intersection, just looking to the west side. Barron Circle, this is one that's literally just in its cleanup stages. 340, there's a little bit of work to do at the top of the page there to close in that island. Crews will be on site at the beginning of next week, have that wrapped up by the end of next week and cleaned up and out of there. Any questions or comments?
Is Lake Shore, is that one of your projects? Been getting questions about that.
Yes, so we're putting in, similar to our cable barrier projects, we're installing concrete barrier due to some of the material issues we've had getting cable. It's just a way to keep prevent head-on crashes there in those divided medians.
So those precast barriers, that's the.
Yeah, yes, we've got a surplus of precast barriers, so it'll be set and pinned in place permanently, get them repaired, and then it'll actually get like a gray paint on it.
Where on Lake Shore is that? Yes. Where on Lake Shore are you talking about?
From, is it 19th Street? 19th, down to like Pilgrims, that whole area. People come out and
MLK, the river.
Yep.
yeah, I guess I want that.
I had questions on the I-35, so 11th to 12th, the pedestrian signals are in. I mean, what from a pedestrian standpoint, crossing into there, there's not a, is there anything left? Is there, besides maybe final landscaping?
That's really it.
So a lot of it is city, because we're gonna trick up that, a couple of those underpasses.
I mean, once they get finished, then we can do what we couldn't do what we need to do.
Yeah. My other question was, and maybe that was the first slide you had, the Highway 84 Waco Drive, the sidewalk project. Was that the first slide?
That it is, yes, sir.
Can you put back to that? Give me the brief on that one, because we have one council member who's concerned about it.
Sure.
Well, we're all concerned about it.
So the bulk of the flat work outside of what I'm gonna call the corner pieces of the intersections is pretty much wrapped up. We've been working with Encore to get our new electrical services set up so that we can power up the new signals, cut off the old, wreck them out, and then complete the new curb ramps in those corners. As of today, we have over half of those services in place. By the end of this month, we'll have either all permanent or at least temporarily spliced into new services so we can cut over the signals. Our technicians will be at Center Point on Monday to start cutting over there. So on Monday of next week, you'll start seeing some action of new signals being turned on, old pulled out, and then that'll help us start cleaning up some of those corners that you see.
So you have to wait till you pull that whole thing out of there to do the corner.
Right,
Basically.
right, because
That's so the question I got is like, it went really well for a long time and then lately it's just.
So understood, yes, sir. There's some third party commitments in getting those electrical services set up.
And that's what I tell the constituent, is that it's Encore's fault.
I've got a question about Encore. Is there anything that this collective body can do? I used to get complaints about inspectors. The complaints I get now is Encore is slow. They've got a guy named Justin in this area, and he just wants swamp. Is there anything that this body can do? Because they're killing economic development.
It's worth it.
And they're killing you all too. I mean, it just, and you tell Michael, he refers you to Dallas. And I'll refer you to Michael.
We see some of the same things.
I know the way it goes. Is there anything we can do to expedite this craziness.
Offhand, I don't have any great ideas, but it's certainly worth discussing.
I think we need to discuss it because it's, you know, when you see traffic lights up and we know what you're waiting for.
Right.
And I mean, it makes everybody, it makes the cities look bad, it makes TxDOT look bad, because the citizen doesn't care. All they know is it's done and it's not working.
Right.
And it's Belmead's fault, or TxDOT's fault, or I like to blame it on Lakeview. I tell them.
Well, we can, I can reach out to Michael Baldwin,
And some of that's been done on this particular
Yeah,
project.
and I've reached out to him on other city projects, but maybe we tell him as a collective body here, just maybe take a meeting with them and brainstorm on how to move things along a little faster. But I know they're, like you say, they are swamped. I don't know, they're having problems with personnel and people hired and all that.
Anytime there's a weather event, those crews go respond to the weather event. They're not immune to the material issues.
Exactly. But it'd be good to have some official dialogue with them, like Councilman or City Manager Zachary. That's a good idea. I'll follow up. I think that would be right. I think, does anybody else have any questions, Clay?
Yeah, I do about the 340 on ramp. Did you tell me that they're gonna resurface?
It will be, yes, sir.
There'll be a surface project.
Yes, sir. We've got a mill and overlay project of the interstate. It actually just last month, so it'll be starting up this summer. And it includes a full depth repair of that bad spot in the on ramp, and it'll get resurfaced as well.
Okay, thanks, Clay. Where are we here? Work group updates. Do we have any work group updates? I don't see the topic back.
No, let me give a quick update. So we don't have anyone here today, but one of the work groups connected an automated vehicle we met yesterday. And one of the important parts of connected automated vehicle work group is that not only their input is needed for the next MTP, but we really need to have much more in-depth discussion on thinking about connected automated vehicle beyond single occupancy vehicle, but also in terms of how. So for instance, Baylor University has a contract now in which these little robots are delivering food. Well, these robots still need to access our sidewalks and such. And so typically, if the curb ramps are not appropriately designed, it becomes difficult for those kinds of automation to work. And this is gradually, most of the times when we think of connected automated vehicle, we think of two people partying in a vehicle with a television inside their car and just going aimlessly here. But that's not really the most important part. The most important part is how we're going to automate a lot of delivery systems, the trucks and the logistics and the manufacturing. So this is really important work. And if you have someone from your city that really needs to be part of that in-depth discussion, it's really important that they do join us. We may end up convening the connected automated vehicle work group more frequently than three months, because most of our work groups convene on a quarterly basis. But based on our discussion yesterday, it became clear that we'll probably need to meet more often than not. And what we would like to do is before the end of this year, we would like that work group to present to you a brief plan, not only related to charging infrastructure, but also with connected automated vehicle, a very brief 2-3 page for your consideration so that we can then incorporate that into the next MTP. For the bike and pedestrian work group, the next meeting is on May 17th, and with bike and pedestrian work group, similarly, a lot of their concerns at this point in time need to be rolled over into our MTP consideration as we go over the call for proposal systems. That's all we have.
Okay, that's the work group updates. We now go to item 11, the MPO monthly report. Dr. Kumar.
So one of the important items is we have started receiving the contributions to the local fund, and we have received contributions from cities of Robinson, Woodward, Belmead, and Waco. We are waiting on the county and two more cities. And once we have that, and this is fully functional and it's very nicely set up, so it's all ready to go. So I'm really pleased with that because when we sign the when we sign the agreement for the SS4A, that will be the time we also have to show where the sources of local match for the project is going to be. And so it is entirely set up. So we are happy about that. We are expecting to receive the dues by May 15th from cities of Lacey Lakeview and Hewitt. And Montgomery, thank you, and the county. So, one of the important, really important item that I have is Arthur. Can you please come here? Thank you. Yeah, we are really happy to have Arthur Chambers join us. He's our new senior planner, and he is coming from Texas A&M. He worked at the Texas Target community in the Rio Grande Valley and worked with several cities there. He graduated with a master's in urban planning from Texas A&M December of last year, and this week is the second week. This is the second week with the MPO, and we are really delighted to have him. You will begin to see our improvements in data GIS mapping immediately, and a lot of our work will show even better quality than we have been doing. So we're really happy to have him here. Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Arthur.
All the other updates have already done.
Already done all the other updates. Yeah, welcome. I look forward to working with you. We now have announcements. Item number 12. The next MPO policy board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 16th, 2023 at 2 p.m. We will have a full agenda of items. Does anyone have an agenda item that would like to be considered for a future meeting this time? Speak up if so. So we don't have any requests in that. We're good there. Item number 13, the hearing of visitors. This time we provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on any item of MPO business not identified on this agenda. We'll open a hearing of visitors at 2:56. I see John Deaver back there. John, everyone okay? Good.
Nothing to say.
Nothing. Good. Appreciate you being here. We will now close the hearing of visitors at 2:57. And we will adjourn the meeting at 2:57. Thanks, everybody.
Stick it to 1 hour this time.
And I don't know how to.
Yeah, right.